When you think of the Super Nintendo era, you probably think of iconic titles like Super Metroid, Donkey Kong Country, or Final Fantasy series, games that pushed the boundaries of storytelling, atmosphere, and gameplay. But let's be real, who remembers this Lethal Weapon game? A side-scrolling beat-em-up based on the blockbuster buddy cop movie from the late 80s and early 90s. Looking back in 2025, it's amusing to see how boldly Hollywood adapted its stories into video games. More often than not, these attempts were a bit of a mixed bag. Some were entertaining, while others felt more like quick money grabs. Lethal Weapon falls somewhere right in the middle of that range. At first glance, the game seems pretty simple. You choose to play as either Riggs or Murtaugh, though they both play surprisingly similar despite their quite different personalities in the movies. You move from left to right, punching and shooting your way through waves of criminals who all seem to have been cloned in some strange underground lab. This is typical of licensed games from this period. Often, character uniqueness gets overshadowed by repetitive gameplay elements. But let's be fair, there's something charming about it. The graphics, while not quite on the level of something like Streets of Rage 2 on the Genesis, are still sharp and lively with their bright colors. The soundtrack is pure 90s, but with a rough energy that really tries, to capture the feeling of those action movies, and frankly, in its own way, it pulls it off. If you squint a bit, you can almost hear Danny muttering, "I'm too old for this," each time you take down another henchman with a jump kick. When you compare it to other beat-em-ups from that era, like Final Fight or Turtles in Time, Lethal Weapon doesn't quite reach the same level of depth or polish. It's missing some of that smoothness, the variety, and the big arcade feel. Still, what it does represent is a snapshot of the design mindset back then. Take a popular franchise, toss it into a playable game, and hope that kids renting it from Blockbuster will have a good weekend. Looking at it in 2025, this game isn't exactly a hidden classic, but it remains a pretty interesting piece of gaming history. It captures that time when developers were still figuring out how to merge the thrill of movies with interactive gameplay. For fans of the films, it's like a quirky little time capsule, a reminder of when Riggs and Murtaugh weren't just big-screen heroes, but also pixelated characters on your TV at home. So, is Lethal Weapon for the Super Nintendo worth a shot today? If you're after a masterpiece, probably not. But if you're exploring retro games with a bit of curiosity, humor, and nostalgia, then yes. It's worth trying out at least once, not because it's the greatest beat-em-up from its era, but because it offers a glimpse into where gaming started and how much it's evolved since then. Thanks for tuning in. I'd love to hear what you think of this classic old-timer. Also, do you have any suggestions for which games we should feature next? Let me know.